we begin as we do every night, keeping them honest. This time, however, we're not talking about BP. We're talking about the government. A new rule announced today, backed by the force of law and the threat of fines and felony charges. A rule that will prevent reporters and photographers and anyone else from getting anywhere close to booms and oil-soaked wildlife in just about any place we need to be. By now, you're probably familiar with cleanup crews stiff-arming the media, private security blocking cameras, ordinary workers clamming up, some not even saying who they're working for because they're afraid of losing their jobs. BP has said again and again that's not their policy, yet again and again it has happened. We've seen it. But that's BP. Now the government apparently is getting in on the act, despite what Admiral Thad Allen promised about transparency just nearly a month ago. Here's what he said back then.
I have put out a written directive, and I can provide it for the record, that says the media will have uninhibited access anywhere we're doing operations, except for two things: if it's a security or a safety problem. That is my policy.
Uninhibited access unless it's a security or safety problem. Well, the Coast Guard today announced new rules keeping photographers and reporters and anyone else from coming within 65 feet of any response vessel or booms out on the water or on beaches. 65 feet. Now, in order to get closer, you have to get direct permission from the Coast Guard captain of the Port of New Orleans. You have to call up the guy. What this means is that oil-soaked birds on islands surrounded by boom, you can't get close enough to take that picture. Shots of oil on beaches with booms, stay 65 feet away. Pictures of oil-soaked booms uselessly laying in the water because they haven't been collected like they should, you can't get close enough to see that. And believe me, that is out there. But you only know that if you get close to it, and now you can't without permission. Violators could face a fine of $40,000 and Class D felony charges. What's even more extraordinary is that the Coast Guard tried to make the exclusion zone 300 feet before scaling it back to 65 feet. Here's how Admiral Allen defends it.
It's not unusual at all for the Coast Guard to establish either safety or security zones around any number of facilities or activities for public safety and for the safety of the equipment itself. We would do this for marine events, fireworks demonstrations, cruise ships going in and out of port.
So this is the exact same logic that federal wildlife officials used to prevent CNN on 2 occasions from getting pictures of oiled birds that have been collected. Pictures like that we're about to show you, which are obviously deeply disturbing. Pictures of oiled gulls that we just happened to catch. Suddenly we were told after that day we couldn't catch it anymore. So keeping prying eyes out of marshes, away from booms, off the beaches is now government policy. When asked why now, after all this time, Thad Allen said he'd gotten some complaints from local officials worried people might get hurt. Now, we don't know who these officials are. We'd like to, but transparency is apparently not a high priority with Thad Allen either these days. Maybe he's accurate, and some officials are concerned, and that's their right. But we've heard far more from local officials about not being able to get a straight story from the government or BP. I've met countless local officials desperate for pictures to be taken and stories written about what is happening in their communities. We're not the enemy here. Those of us down here trying to accurately show what is happening, we are not the enemy. I've not heard about any journalist who's disrupted relief efforts. No journalist wants to be seen as having slowed down the cleanup or made things worse. If a Coast Guard official asked me to move, I'd move. But to create a blanket rule that everyone has to stay 65 feet away from boom and boats, that doesn't sound like transparency. Frankly, it's a lot like in Katrina when they tried to make it impossible to see recovery efforts of people who died in their homes. If we can't show what is happening, warts and all, no one will see what's happening. And that makes it very easy to hide failure and hide incompetence, and makes it very hard to highlight the hard work of cleanup crews and the Coast Guard. We are not the enemy here. We found out today 2 public broadcasting journalists reporting on health issues say they've been blocked again and again from visiting a federal mobile medical unit in Venice, a trailer where cleanup workers are being treated. It's known locally as the BP compound, and these 2 reporters say everyone they've talked to, from BP to the Coast Guard to Health and Human Services in Washington, has been giving them the runaround. We're not talking about a CIA station here. We're talking about a medical trailer that falls under the authority of guess who? Thad Allen. The same Thad Allen who promised transparency all those weeks ago. We are not the enemy here.